Hands where I can see them. The order cracked through the cabin before takeoff, slicing clean through the low hum of recycled air. Passengers stiffened. A paper cup tumbled down the aisle, trailing a dark ribbon of coffee before hitting a shoe. Seat 2 amperes was the center of gravity. A tall black man in a navy suit, creased sharp, cuffs glinting gold, sat perfectly still. Adrian Cole. He didn't look dangerous. He looked like he belonged, which, on this flight, was apparently a problem. Jenna Morales, senior flight attendant, held her tablet like a shield. Her corporate smile had collapsed into a frown she didn't recognize. The silence around her was electric, a quiet born of judgment. "Sir," she said, voice cracking, "we've asked 3 times for proper ID. You need to comply." Adrian's eyes lifted, calm even, "And I've complied 3 times. You've shown me a screenshot," she snapped. "Anyone can fake that. Anyone." Adrian tilted his head. "Or just me." Jenna's jaw tightened. Row 1C's businessman laughed, dry and sharp. "Guess they let anyone up here these days." A few chuckles followed low. "Complicit." Nobody stopped them. Adrian didn't move. His hand brushed the face of his Patek Philippe, the tick of its second hand steady as his pulse. The intercom cracked. "Captain Mercer, please report to first class." Now, a whisper rippled through the rows. A camera light blinked on. Captain Derek Mercer emerged from the cockpit, gold stripes catching the cabin glow. 23 years in the air, and he could tell instantly this wasn't turbulence. This was something worse. "What's going on?" he asked. "This passenger refuses to leave," Yenna said, pointing sharp, accusing. "He won't show a valid ID. He's been confrontational." The word confrontational hung in the air like a slur wearing a uniform. Mercer looked. The man didn't move. Expensive suit, composed, hands folded neatly, not an inch of aggression. But Jenna's voice shook, and she had never lied before. "Sir, I'm Captain Mercer," he said, tone measured. "We'll get this sorted quickly. Can I see your ticket?" Adrian handed him a slip. "Aerovista flight 2847. Seat 2 amperes. Paid fare first class." Mercer inspected it. Embossed seal, holographic strip, time-stamped barcode, everything legitimate. "This appears to be an order," Mercer said finally. "It's fake," Jenna blurted out. Her voice carried down the cabin. "Captain, look at him. Really look. Does he belong in first class?" Gasps. Silence. Phones lifted higher. Ava Morgan, freelance travel vlogger, already had her stream running. Her viewer count hit 8,000 before she could process what she was filming. "Oh my God," she whispered to the mic. "She really said that." Adrian turned slightly toward Jenna. "What does belonging look like to you?" "That's not what I meant," she stammered. "It's exactly what you meant," he said softly. The businessman in 1C rolled his eyes. "Captain, some of us have connections to make. Either toss him or let's go." "I'm not tossing anyone," Mercer replied sharply, but his confidence wavered. The entire cabin was watching, waiting for him to choose a side. Adrian adjusted his cufflinks again. "It's not your connections that are delayed, Seer. It's your conscience." A wave of murmurs rippled down the aisle. Someone whispered, "This is about race." Someone else hissed, "Keep your voice down." "Sir," Mercer said carefully, "I'll need additional identification license. Card. Anything." Adrian nodded once, reached into his jacket. Mercer tensed reflex, not reason. But Adrian only drew out a slim leather wallet. Inside gleamed a black American Express Centurion card. Mercer hesitated. This is the real deal." "Yes," Adrian said. "It is." "Royas, One of the arriving security officers barked a laugh. "You can buy fakes online. Don't mean a thing." A woman in 3D snorted, "Probably rented the suit." 2. Ava's stream chat went wild. "They're saying this on camera. He's so calm. This is insane. This is racism live. Share now." Adrian leaned back. "Every second this goes on. You're proving my point." "What point?" Mercer asked. Adrian's watch beeped once. "That bias isn't about training manuals. It's about instinct." Rojas folded his arm. "Big talk. Now stand up." Adrian stayed seated. "Lieutenant Kim, you might want to advise your partner to lower his tone." Kim blinked. "Excuse me, because right now," Adrian said, calm as glass, "you're both participating in unlawful detention. Are you threatening us?" Rojas snapped. "No," Adrian said. "I'm documenting you." Phonus tilted again. The air in first class turned heavy. Claustrophobic. The intercom crackled. "Captain Mercer, operations here. We're seeing social media traffic 42,000 viewers. Handle this discreetly." Jenna froze. "They're filming. Half the country's filming." Ava whispered to her stream, "And it's getting ugly." Mercer wiped sweat from his temple. "Sir, please, just step off. We'll settle this outside." Adrian smiled faintly. "You're asking me to surrender dignity for your convenience. That's not negotiation. That's habit." A man 2 rows back leaned forward. "If he just showed his ID properly, this wouldn't happen." Adrian turned toward him. "If you just listened, it wouldn't either." The man looked away. Someone laughed nervously. The sound of plastic buckles clicked a symphony of discomfort. Mercer's radio buzzed again. "Captain Mercer, hold position. Executive-level instruction incoming." He exhaled. Of course, Adrian's watch ticked louder in his mind. "That would be the call," he murmured. "The call." Jenna frowned. He glanced at her. "The one that decides whose career ends first." Her face drained of color. The engines outside groaned. Light flickered over the rows. White, blue, white. Someone's phone beeped a news alert. Aero Vista Flight 2847 trending worldwide. Rojas shifted uneasily. "What the hell's happening?" Kim's radio chirped. "Stand down. Repeat, stand down. Passenger 2 amperes cleared by corporate directive." Kim blinked. "Cleared." Adrian sat up straighter. "Good. Now we can talk about why this happened." Jenna took a step back. "Who are you?" Adrian looked directly at her. "Someone your company thought it trained out of this problem." He tapped his watch again. "The test is working." The businessman in 1C muttered, "Unbelievable." Adrian turned. Eyes calm but cutting. "Belief isn't the issue, Seer. Awareness is." He could feel every gaze burning into him: curiosity, guilt, hostility, shame. Different shades of the same disease. The captain's phone buzzed. "Caller ID. Aero Vista Operations. Urgent." He answered. A crisp, female voice came through. "Captain Mercer, this is Senior VP Angela Way. Do not remove the passenger in 2 amperes. Corporate oversight confirms his clearance. Will contact you directly." Mercer stared at the man in the seat. "Sir? Who exactly are you?" Adrian smiled, not smug. "But surgical. Let's just say," he said, "I report to the people who write your flight manual." Jenna's knees weakened. "This can't be real." "It's as real," Adrian said quietly, "as your assumptions." Passengers whispered now, in open awe. Ava's stream count hit 60. Ling ling ling. Comments flooded in. "He's a board member. They're so fired." History happening live. Adrian clasped his hands together. Gaze unwavering. "Captain," he said, "today isn't about me. It's about every passenger who's ever been told they don't belong." Mercer swallowed. "Sir, what happens now?" Adrian exhaled. "Now, we fly And when we land, we talk about what just happened in front of 60,000 witnesses. He paused, glancing around. You'll all want to remember this day. It's when the airline industry learned the meaning of turbulence. The engines whined to life. The cabin trembled, but no one was thinking about flight anymore. Adrian turned toward the window. The city shimmered below the tarmac lights. He whispered to himself, let's see if they can land their conscience as easily as their planes. Stories like this aren't fiction anymore. They're warnings and mirrors. The engines groaned as the aircraft taxied toward the runway, but the cabin wasn't thinking about flight paths anymore. Every passenger in first class was watching 2 amperes, the man whose calm had become a kind of rebellion. Adrian Cole scrolled through his tablet, the blue glow tracing the sharp lines of his face. From the corner of his eye, he saw Ava Morgan's camera light blinking a small red pulse that matched his heartbeat. Her live stream chat scrolled so fast it blurred into light. He's too calm. He's dangerous. He's right. This is insane. Each comment felt like static electricity, snapping invisibly between him and the crowd. Sir, Captain Mercer began, leaning toward him. Corporate confirmed your credentials. You're cleared. I just want to say. Don't. Adrian interrupted, still scrolling. You don't get to want to say when the system you represent just proved what it was designed to do. Mercer hesitated. What system? Adrian's eyes lifted, calm as a blade, the one that confuses control for justice. Jenna Morales stood near the galley, knuckles white around her tablet. Her smile, once corporate bright, had collapsed into something defensive. Every pair of eyes in first class seemed to be waiting for her to speak, to confess, or justify. And both felt equally impossible. The businessman in 1C broke the silence. Maybe we should just thank him for the TED Talk and take off. Some of us have real meetings. Adrian turned. Real meetings that let you ignore the unreal parts of the world. I didn't say. You didn't have to. A hush fell over the cabin. The oxygen seemed thinner. The woman in 3D whispered to her husband. They're recording everything. Her husband muttered. Good. Maybe they'll think twice next time they upgrade the wrong person. A nervous laugh rose from the back. The sound landed like a slap. Mercer crouched beside the seat. Mr. Cole, Adrian, what do you need from us right now? Adrian's thumb brushed the crystal of his watch. Proof. Proof. Of what? That training manuals don't mean transformation. Ava's live stream hit 150,000 viewers. Her microphone trembled as she whispered, We're watching policy happen in real time. He's a board member. He's lying. She said people like him. That's on video. Adrian opened his briefcase slowly. The hinges creaked. Royes. The security officer near the door flinched instinctively. You see, Adrian said, voice steady, I move. And you brace. That's instinct, not procedure. He set a leather folder on the tray. The gold emblem flashed in the overhead light. Aero Vista Holdings. Board of Directors. Mercer's breath caught. Yes, Adrian said softly. And this is your audit. Captain. Jenna's throat tightened. Sir, why didn't you just tell us who you were? Because if equality depends on power, Adrian replied. Then it's not equality. It's compliance. He turned slightly toward Ava's camera. And everyone watching should ask themselves what they'd have done differently. The businessman in 1C scoffed. You people always play the race card. The words hit like a gunshot. Heads turned. Someone gasped. Adrian's eyes narrowed. The calm sharpening. You people. That's the deck. Sire. I'm just showing you the hand you already played. 1C's face went red. That's not what I meant. It's exactly what you meant. Adrian said. You just didn't expect to hear it said out loud. For the first time, Mercer raised his voice. Enough. That language will not continue on my aircraft. Adrian smiled thinly. Welcome to accountability. Captain, feels uncomfortable, doesn't it? A group of passengers murmured uneasily. One whispered, he's right. Another hissed, he's making it worse. A kid in row 4 filmed everything, whispering to his friend, dude, this is history. Massa Sahil, Mr. Cole, the CEO himself, is monitoring this. They're preparing a statement. Adrian didn't look up. Apologies are cheap. Systems are expensive. He tapped his tablet, pulling up a document full of statistics. 47 discrimination complaints this quarter, he said quietly. Everyone marked, resolved, no further action. You call that training? Mercer's eyes flicked to Jenna. She was shaking. Adrian's tone softened. Just barely. This isn't about one person. It's about reflex. The reflex that looks at skin before it looks at credentials. The plane shuddered in a crosswind. Overhead bins rattled. Jenna grabbed a seat back, whispering a prayer. Adrian didn't move. Relax, he said softly. It's just turbulence. Nature's way of reminding you that stability is an illusion. A few passengers laughed nervously. The sound felt like an exhale. Jenna finally spoke. Sir, I was wrong. Adrian turned to her. About me. Her eyes glistened. About everything. About what I thought safety meant. He nodded slowly. Good. Safety without empathy is just control. The cockpit phone buzzed. Mercer answered. A corporate voice filled the air. Captain Mercer. CNN and Reuters are running the feed. Handle this quietly. Mercer muttered. Too late for quiet. Adrian's phone vibrated. Legal team ready. He smiled. The kind of smile that frightened people who mistook kindness for weakness. You planned this, Mercer said. I planned to fly. Adrian answered. The discrimination planned itself. Mercer's voice dropped. You set us up. No, Captain. I gave you a mirror. The businessman in 1C exhaled loudly. This is exhausting. Adrian looked at him. Imagine living it every day. Silence. Jenna's voice cracked. Sir, I didn't mean harm. No one ever does, Adrian said. That's why it's so dangerous. The CEO's voice crackled over speaker. Mr. Cole, the board is watching. We're deeply sorry. Adrian interrupted. Then prove it. We're initiating policy review. Policy don't change people. Adrian said. Conséquence du. The line went dead. Outside, the horizon melted from gray to gold. Dawn somewhere miles ahead. Adrian stared out the window. The reflection of his face floated over the clouds, dark skin framed by white light. He thought of his father, pulled off a train for looking suspicious, of his mother, humiliated at a hotel check-in. He'd promised himself he'd never let it happen again, and yet here he was. 30,000 feet in the air, fighting the same war with different uniform. The intercom popped. Ladies and gentlemen, we've reached cruising altitude. Someone laughed nervously at the irony. Adrian's mouth twitched into a near smile. Cruising altitude, he whispered. For some of us, it's still takeoff clearance. Jenna approached, voice trembling. Sir, what happens to me? Adrian studied her for a long moment. That depends, he said softly, on whether you help us fix this or pretend it never happened. She nodded, tears falling silently. I want to fix it. Then start by listening, Adrian said, really listening. Avas camera zoom it closer. Her audience surging past 230. Ling ling ling. Her whisper was almost reverent. He's not just surviving, he's teaching. The chat exploded. Quote, that safety without empathy is just control. Damn, this man is rewriting the playbook. Royas muttered. He's loving this attention. Adrian didn't turn. I'm not loving it. I'm surviving it. He glanced toward the camera. Difference is important. Mercer exhaled heavily. "You're going to report all this?" Adrian shook his head. "No, Captain. I'm going to publish it." The words hit like a pressure change, silent, total, quiet ending beat. The cabin dimmed as the lights shifted to cruising mode. Blue LEDs washed over faces, half ashamed, half awake. Phones still recorded. The low electric hum filled every pause. Adrian leaned back, closing his eyes. The engines roared beneath him, steady, relentless, like the heartbeat of an institution too big to feel. For a brief second, he saw his own reflection on the window glass. Dark skin, weary eyes, the faint ghost of dignity rebuilt from ashes. And he whispered, "Let them see me. This time, let them really see." Ava's lens held on his face, still, calm, unbreakable. The viewer count crossed 250. Ling ling ling. Someone typed into the chat, "He's not angry, he's inevitable." The cabin settled into a hush that wasn't peace. It was the kind of quiet that comes after something breaks, but before anyone admits they heard it. Overhead, the light shifted from bright to a softer blue, a signal for rest that fooled no one. A thin band of dawn pressed along the horizon, like a seam someone had stitched badly. The aircraft's skin hummed, the air vents breathed a cool, metallic smell. A glass in the galley chimed faintly with each tremor of air. Seat 2 amperes. Still the fulcrum. Adrian Cole angled his tablet toward his lap, not reading so much as letting the light wash his hands. The comments he could not see might as well have been carved into the cabin wall. "He's inevitable. He's a plant. He's right. He's dangerous." All of them true and untrue at once. He closed his eyes briefly and saw a boy pressing his forehead to a dirty train window while his father argued in a voice too calm for the injustice that followed. "Sir, we'll need you to step off." The boy remembered the feel of that sentence, the way it crawled down a spine and set up camp for years. 2 rows ahead, Captain Derek Mercer stood in the galley with his hat tucked under his arm, hands braced against the cart counter as if the airplane needed him to hold it together. Outside the forward curtain, first class watched. Behind it, the weight of the cockpit door made the air feel heavier. He had started to write the incident report staccato phrases on the flight deck's tablet. Passenger 2 amperes non-compliant crew felt threatened, security called. He had deleted it. Begun again, request for identification mishandled. Escalation unnecessary. Deleted that, too. The truth was a moving target, and for the first time in a long time, he'd stopped trusting his aim. Jenna Morales stood within arm's reach, posture straight, ease rav. Her hair, perfect at boarding, had loosened a fraction along her temple. Rebellion made of flyaways. She held a plastic cup of water that she didn't drink. The rim trembled against the light. "Captain," she said. The words usual security had drained out of it. Mercer looked up. "Yenna, I need to say something to him. Not on camera. Not—" She glanced to where phones hovered over aisle armrests like low moons. "Not for them." Mercer's jaw shifted. "Then you need to wait. He's not a surface conversation." "I know what I said," she whispered. "So do 180,000 other people." Jenna set the full cup into the trash, the water landing with a soft "en disant plop." "I didn't wake up to be this person." "Neither did I," Mercer said. "Yet here we are." The curtains swayed, letting in a breath of the cabin coffee. Cologne. Second-hand anxiety. Somewhere behind them, a seatbelt buckle clicked a small, decisive sound. A flight attendant from economy appeared at the galley edge, eyes wide. "Someone in row 7 is asking for you," she murmured to Jenna. "He says he heard everything and wants to file a complaint about me." Jenna's stomach dropped. "About what you said?" Pause. "And what you didn't," Jenna nodded slowly. Tell him I'll be with him in 5 minutes. And that she caught the word sorry on her tongue, tasted how easy it was, that I will listen. The attendant left. The curtain fell back into place. The plane shuddered through a minor shear. Glasses in the galley chimed again. A thin polita alarm. Mercer's phone buzzed against the counter. He didn't need to see the caller ID. Only one number felt like that, urgent and heavy enough to change the oxygen content. He lifted it, pressed to his ear. Mercer. A voice measured in boardroom's CEO Robert Jennings. Captain, update. We're stable at cruise. Mercer said. No further activity. Viewership. Mercer glanced through the curtain at Ava Morgan, who had lowered her phone to eye level, finger covering the chat so she wouldn't be sick from the speed of it. Still climbing, Jennings exhaled over the line, and for a moment, the air between them felt warm with embarrassment. We're convening in 10, he said. Legal. PR. Ops. Way. I want your preliminary. Mercer looked at the counter, at his reflection, refracted in a steel container like a man already underwater. Preliminary, we failed. Silence on the line that was not static. Then noted. The call ended. Across the aisle, a woman in 3D adjusted her scarf and leaned toward 2 amperes. I didn't mean to laugh, she said. Cheeks hot. It was nerves. Adrian's smile didn't quite reach his eyes. Laughter is a kind of vote. She recoiled. I'm not a bad person. You're a person, Adrian said. That's where the work lives. The woman's mouth pinched. A defensive apology flared and died. She faced forward, hands on her knees like a child waiting out a storm. Behind her, row 1C. The businessman who had announced his meetings like a moral credential leaned back and muttered to no one. I'm not tiptoeing for a stunt. He said it soft enough to pretend it wasn't meant to be heard. Adrian heard it anyway. He let it pass. There were larger economies at work than one man's discomfort. Ava breathed through her nose, steadying the camera. Her hands shook less now. This is not about me, she told her audience through the chat she couldn't keep up with. Don't make it about me. Watch what happens. Learn the rhythms of it. Then remember, a child in economy giggled at a cartoon on a tablet, the sound threaded thin and clean through the adult tension. A clarifying note. It made Adrian's chest ache. He closed his eyes again and saw the shape of a hotel lobby carpet, the geometry repeating like a lie you almost believed. He was 11. His mother's face was a mask of patience. The concierge asked for a card twice, then 3 times, then told them the suite had been taken, until a white family complained at the check-in time and somehow an extra penthouse appeared. He didn't remember the name of the hotel. He remembered the way his mother's hand tightened on his shoulder like an anchor and a restraint. Back in the galley, Yenna said, if I apologize to him on camera, everyone will say it's performative. If I don't, everyone will say I hid, then apologize to him off camera. Mercer said, and to the camera on your own time. That sounds like 2 punishments. That sounds like growth. Jenna pressed the heel of her hand against her sternum, where panic sometimes settled, a bird too restless to be tamed. When I started, she said, I loved this job for how much trust people gave me, handed me their babies and their fear. Today I felt bigger than them. I don't know where that came from. From fear of being small, Mercer said, from being told by procedure that your job is to control variance. People are variants. Is that what you tell yourself? Her voice wasn't cruel. Mercer's mouth tilted at one corner. It works on paper. He looked back at the curtain, then past it, to where 2 amperes sat like the fulcrum of a scale. No one on this flight had ever acknowledged. I have a son, he said, surprising himself. He's 16. His mother is Thai. He asks me why security follows him around the electronics store. I tell him to ignore it. Today I realized what I teach him when I say that. Jenna's lips parted. What? That silence is survival. He swallowed, and that is his job. Isn't it? Jenna asked, smaller than before. It's been mine, Mercer said. Look where it got us. The curtain lifted. Lieutenant Janine Kim stepped in, posture composed, eyes rimmed with a fatigue that had nothing to do with hours on shift. Captain, we're staying on board, unless you need us. Mercer nodded. Good. Kim lingered a half second. For the record, she said, softer. He was polite. He scared me because of what I imagined, not what he did. Mercer met her eyes. Right that. Kim nodded once. Understood. She vanished as quickly as she arrived, the curtain whispering back into place. A braided thread of voices unfurled just beyond the seating ring. Some passengers had begun debating in live whispers. He baited them. No. He measured them. I'm not racist. But that sentence is a stop sign. Adrian let the sounds do their work. He was tired, the kind of tired that had no sleep in it. He reached for the leather folder on his tray. His hand paused above the embossing. He could feel the heat of it like an animal, an instrument that still smelled faintly of the boardroom air conditioning, polished wood, the citrus of someone's cologne. He slipped the folder open and slid one document halfway out, a draft policy marked Aerovista Immediate Actions. The bullet points were succinct, wincing. Mandatory body cams for crew during passenger disputes. Third-party audit partner for civil rights violations. Immediate suspension. Pending training for infractions. Creation of Passenger Dignity Council. He tapped the last line. Once. He wasn't in love with the names. He was in love with the idea that people would sit in a room and say dignity out loud until it stopped sounding rhetorical. On the ground, the room where such documents were born was filling. Aerovista Headquarters Crisis Room, 0422A. M. Glass walls. A table long enough to land a surfboard. Screens on 3 sides displaying live feeds. A heat map of hashtag, a stock ticker that made Jennings feel each tenth of a point like a nerve, and the raw cabin footage piped from a dozen phones that had no business being in a command center and every business being there. CEO Robert Jennings folded his hands in front of him and made them stay still. SVP Angela Wei had done that trick for years. He was just learning. Wei stood to his right, face inwardly furious and outwardly immaculate. PR Director Lila Vaughn looked like she had been awake since last Tuesday. General Counsel Hassan had a legal pad in front of him filled with calm handwriting that did not match the storm. Stock down 6.9 pre-market. Lila said, 7.25 on futures. We get to 8. We're in business school case territory. Share price is not the wound. Wei said, it's the fever. Fever gets you fired. Lila said, not unkindly. Hassan tapped his pen. We need to consider 42 U.S.C. Section 1981 and Section 1983 exposure in public accommodations. Typically, we lean on common carrier discretion. Today, that becomes a cudgel in the wrong clip. Jennings rubbed his temple. The screen at the center showed Adrian in 2 amperes, head turned, patient and unyielding. I called him, he said. He said policy don't change people. Consequences do. Wei's mouth tightened. He's right. A junior analyst slid into a seat at the far end of the table. We have the transcript of the flight attendant's words, he said, voice too nervous for the room, but honest in a way that made Wei like him defensively. Does he belong in first class? It's been clipped in 9 languages. Of course it has. Leela said. It's a story you can mouth along to. Hassan flipped a page. What Adrian wanted is what we should have wanted, proof that our training worked. We didn't get proof. We got a demonstration. Publicly firing people live won't fix this. We said. Lila raised an eyebrow. It buys us hours. Hours become days. Wei answered with something that sounded like faith dressed in logistics. Or we buy years. Independent audits. Body cams. A real counsel that has teeth. We give him the policy deck he already drafted. She looked at Jennings. He has one. You know. Jennings' jaw made a small concession that looked like respect and fear. I suspected. The analyst pulled up a new screen. Also, this. Flight data turned into a heat map of removals over 2 years. The bright clusters were not random. They could have been marketing targets. They were not. Hassan exhaled. Pattern. Wei nodded. Pattern keeps you from asking if it's just a bad apple. Pattern is the orchard. Jennings leaned forward, elbows on the table, the corporate posture of resolution and its weight. We do this Adrian's way, he said, not because we're caught, because we're finally listening. Lila tapped a manicured nail against her notepad. We'll still lose a point today, then we lose it. Jennings said, and make it back with interest we can sleep with. He didn't say it like a speech. He said it like a pilot telling a passenger the weather will be rough before it's clear. Wei's phone buzzed. She glanced down, then up. He's moving. They watched as Adrian stood in first class. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. Put him on the center screen. Jennings said, and the room did. Back in the air. Adrian rested his hands on the seat back in front of him. The cabin gave him that brittle silence people reserve for weddings and funerals and verdicts. Some of you think this is a spectacle, he said. It isn't. It's a mirror. Spectacles ask you to look at someone else. Mirrors ask you to look at yourself. Row 1C's businessman made a small bit unhappy sound. Adrian let it roam alone until it died. When we land, Adrian continued, there will be statements. There will be apologies. There will be people who say this was the wrong way to do the right thing. He tipped his head toward Ava's camera. There is no right way to make people look at what they've trained themselves not to see. Jenna stood in the galley threshold. She looked like someone about to speak at a funeral, which, in a way, she was the funeral of her certainty. Ms. Morales, Adrian said gently, not turning, still somehow looking right at her. Do you have something you want to say to me that isn't for a camera? She stepped forward 3 paces. The phones twisted slightly, as if to make room. Yes, she said, voice steady and small. I looked at you and decided you're belonging. I was wrong. She swallowed. I don't want to be that kind of safety anymore. Adrian nodded. That's a beginning. Row 3D lifted a hand halfway. The gesture of a student who'd learned too late how to learn. What do the rest of us do? Start small, Adrian said. When someone says people like him, ask them to finish the sentence. Then ask them to imagine hearing it about themselves. Ava shifted the camera to the side so her face wouldn't be in it. She didn't want this to be about her. And also, privately, she wanted to be changed by it. Mercer cleared his throat. Mr. Cole, I have to file a report. He said it like a man confessing a crime. I don't know how to write it. Write the part where you were silent. Adrian said, write what you thought that you didn't say. That's where the truth hides. Mercer absorbed that. He could feel, absurdly, his son's sticker tugging inside his flight bag. It was a small, cartoon dog giving a thumbs up, which suddenly felt like a joke the universe had written 20 years ago and saved for now. He thought of telling his son about this, and how the boy's face would search his own for what mattered. Not whether he had been right, whether he had been brave. Lieutenant Kim reappeared and stood quietly to one side. For the record, she said into the air, speaking to no one and everyone, I have performed removals. Most of those removed were people of color. I told myself it was random. I don't tell myself that anymore. Row 1C's businessman stared straight ahead, a muscle in his cheek industriously working. After a long minute he said, not to Adrian but to space, "I'm sorry for what I said." The words hit the floor like coins, shiny and insufficient. Adrian didn't make him pick them up. "Thank you." The plane leveled through a smooth patch. The air vents whispered. Someone's ice settled in a glass with the softest clatter. Jenna whispered, "What if they fire me?" Adrian looked at her. "What if they don't?" A beat. Then I'll owe more than an apology. You'll owe attention," he said. "It's the only tax that changes anyone." He sat again, a gesture that felt like a pardon no one deserved, and a discipline he had earned the right to wield. He slid the policy draft back into the folder and closed it as if that might keep the world from mishandling it before it touched ground. He checked his watch. The second hand slid across the 12 with the precision of a promise. T plus 91 minutes. He breathed in, the air cool and synthetic, and good enough. In the crisis room below, Jennings looked at Way. "Draft the announcement," he said. "Audit, body cams, counsel, real teeth, and a statement from us, not about optics, about obligation." Way nodded and spoke without looking away from the screen. "Write the part where we were silent." Jennings winced. "Yes, that line." Lila lifted a hand. "People will say we overcorrected." "Let them," Jennings said. "Some corrections are overdue." He didn't say, "Some are for my children." He didn't need to. Way heard it anyway. Back in the sky, the first light pulled a thin line over the wing like a blade sharpening itself. Adrian leaned his head against the window and saw the cabin reflected in the glass. The exit sign glowed red in the reflection. Steady now. The phones had dipped a fraction lower, as if the arms holding them had gotten tired of witnessing without participating. Ava looked down at her chat and typed with her free hand for the first time in 20 minutes. "Remember this sound. The quiet after the truth lands." She hit send, then turned the camera back toward the aisle. "Ladies and gentlemen," the intercom said with the calm of a man who had decided to write exactly what he felt, "we'll begin our descent into Phoenix in 40 minutes. We will be on the ground at 10 past the hour. The weather is clear. Visibility is good." Adrian smiled to himself at visibility. It was either an accident or a small act of courage. He chose to think the latter. He chose to think a lot of things would be acts of courage from now on. Across the aisle, Yenna stood very still, hands clasped, like a person at the start of a prayer she didn't know and wanted to learn. Mercer stepped into the aisle, glanced down its length, and saw not contrition, not absolution attention. It was heavier than either and more useful. He picked up the flight deck tablet again. The cursor blinked where he'd left it. He began to type. "At 1218, I asked a man to trade his dignity for our schedule. At 1219, I declined. At 1221, I learned the difference between order and justice. At 1224, I did not speak. The cost of my silence was paid by someone who has paid enough. This report is an attempt to begin my bill." He stopped, looked toward 2 amperes. Adrian wasn't watching him. He was looking at the wing, as if it were an instrument capable of sounding out a single note enough from somewhere in economy. A baby laughed again. It wasn't a punchline. It was a light. Ava lowered the phone to her lap. The viewer count ticked past 280, 0, 0, 0, and held. A tide paused before its next pull. She wiped at her eyes with the side of her hand, annoyed at herself and grateful. She whispered into the mic meant for 1,000,000 strangers, "If you're still watching, don't just watch." She lifted the phone again, framing Adrian and the aisle and the exit glow in one simple shot. It was not art. It was evidence, which is what art becomes when it has something to answer for. The cabin held its breath. The aircraft droned on, patient and insistent. Outside, the world brightened by small, stubborn degrees. Adrian tapped the glass with a knuckle, a private metronome, then folded his hands and closed his eyes not to sleep, but to fix the image in place, the aisle, the light. The phones lowered a fraction, the captain writing the truth, the attendant learning a different kind of safety. When the plane finally began to descend, the pressure shifted subtly in every ear. People swallowed. Some felt relief. Some felt loss. Adrian felt both. He opened his eyes and watched the city slowly right itself under the wing. The exit sign thrummed a quiet red. The second hand kissed the 12 and moved on. The cost of silence had been tallied in the ledger of a morning payment he hoped would keep coming due. The plane hit the tarmac hard enough to jolt everyone forward. A collective exhale broke through the cabin, the kind of sound that didn't mean relief, only survival. Phoenix heat bled through the sealed windows, bending the morning light into a copper haze. Outside, red and blue strobes washed across the fuselage. Ground crews, federal investigators, corporate suits, an audience waiting for history to taxi to the gate. From seat 2 amperes, Adrian Cole felt the descent in his bone, the hum of reverse thrusters, the subtle yaw of the wing, the scent of burnt rubber. He looked down at his hands. They were still, perfectly still. He had spent his life mastering stillness. But this one felt different, less like control, more like cost. Ladies and gentlemen, Captain Mercer's voice crackled through the intercom, low and deliberate. Welcome to Phoenix Sky Harbor. Please remain seated until we reach the gate. The usual chorus of seatbelts and sighs didn't come. No one dared move. Phones stayed raised. The red recording dots blinked like distant beacons of judgment. The jet bridge latched with a metallic shudder. The cabin air turned heavy, filled with the smell of dust and recycled fear. Through the front window, Adrian could see uniforms forming a semicircle: airport security, federal marshals, airline executives in suits that didn't fit this kind of morning, the hierarchy of crisis. Captain Mercer. The intercom buzzed from ground control. Hold passengers until federal clearance. Copy. Mercer pressed the button on his headset. Copy. His reflection stared back from the windshield, tired eyes, framed by gold stripes that now felt borrowed. Jenna Morales sat rigid in the jump seat, fingers white around the safety harness. Her mascara had bled into the soft tissue beneath her eyes, twin shadows of disbelief. She'd been trained for turbulence, decompression, medical emergencies, not moral ones. Across the aisle, Ava Morgan still streamed, her voice a whisper. We are taxiing now. Authorities are outside. This isn't over. Her viewers had climbed past 300. Ling ling ling. The feed comments scrolled too fast to read. He set them up. No, he exposed them. They'll bury this. Watch the gate. This is where justice either lands or crashes. The door cracked open with a hiss. Sunlight spilled into the cabin, sharp, dry, merciless. The first figure up the bridge was Inspector Elena Torres, Federal Aviation Security. Her badge gleamed. Her expression didn't. Behind her, Hudson, Aerovista's general counsel, carried a folder thick enough to bruise. Captain Mercer, Torres said, voice clipped but polite, we'll need to separate you, your crew, and the passenger in 2 amperes for immediate statements. Mercer nodded once. Understood. Adrian rose, slow and steady. The cabin murmured. Phones pivoted toward him, the way flowers follow light. Torres raised a hand. No recordings beyond this point. A murmur of protest rippled through the rows. Ava whispered to her camera, "They're cutting the feed. Stay with me." She switched to audio only and slid the phone into her pocket. Len dark but mic alive. Torres gestuurd. Mr. Cole, this way. As he passed, the businessman from 1C spoke, low but audible. "You got what you wanted." Adrian paused. "Did I?" The man looked away. Outside, the heat wrapped around them like a punishment. Reporters' voices echoed from behind barricades, shouted questions that no one would answer yet. Is it true he's a board member? Is Aero Vista facing a discrimination probe? Will the captain be suspended? Torres guided Adrian into a narrow conference lounge converted for crisis. The room smelled of burnt coffee and corporate panic. 2 cameras on a tripod, 1 polygraph case untouched in the corner. "Please," she said, motioning to the chair, "we'll begin recording for transparency." He smiled faintly. "Transparency is the currency of the hour." Torres studied him. "You orchestrated this." "I anticipated it," Adrian corrected. "There's a difference. People got hurt." "Yes," he said, "including me." Her expression flickered sympathy, trying to surface and failing under professionalism. "Let's start with your purpose for flying today." "To measure something I couldn't quantify on paper," Adrian said. "Bias doesn't show up on profit reports. It shows up in tone, posture, assumption. I wanted to see if training alone could erase that. And your conclusion." He looked toward the glass where Mercer and Jenna sat waiting across the hall, each in their own small cage of reflection. "Not yet." Torres left to confer with Hassan. The moment she was gone, the room's hum changed air vents, whispering like gossip. Adrian loosened his tie and looked at the mirror. He knew it was one way. He spoke anyway. "You can ask your legal questions." "Hassan, I know you're there." The door opened. Hassan entered, his tie askew, the smell of jet fuel still on his suit. "You've turned a public relations nightmare into a case study." "Adrian, congratulations." "I didn't turn anything," Adrian said. "I revealed it. You ambushed them on camera. I sat in a seat I paid for." Hassan's jaw clenched. "The board wants containment. They'll issue an apology, suspend the crew, promise reforms. It will blow over." Adrian leaned forward. "That's the language of relapse." "What do you want?" Hassan asked. Voice brittle. "Change that costs something." Adrian's tone was even, but the words hit like a gavel. "We heed bias under policy. We disguise fear as procedure. You can't fix what you refuse to name." Outside, flashes, exploded cameras through glass. The world wanted blood or redemption, whichever sold better. Jenna Morales sat opposite an HR representative and a federal note-taker. The fluorescent lights hummed a monotone. She stared at her hand, nails chipped from gripping the seat harness. "Miss Morales," the rep said, "describe your interaction with passenger 2 Amperes." Yenna inhaled. The truth tasted metallic. He showed a ticket. "I didn't believe it." "Why?" A pause that could have lasted a lifetime. "Because he didn't look like first class." "You mean?" "I mean exactly what you think I mean." Her voice cracked. "I've seen frauds. I've seen people try to sneak upgrades. It becomes instinct, but instincts rot." The note-taker's pen slowed. Jenna continued. "Quieter." He was calm. "That scared me. Calm isn't what we're trained for. We're trained for escalation." I mistook dignity for defiance. From the adjoining room, Mercer's voice rose a muffled argument with someone unseen. Jenna looked toward the wall. "He followed my lead. I wish he hadn't." The HR rep scribbled. "Do you feel remorse?" "I feel exposure," Yenna said. "Remorse comes after you stop lying to yourself." Captain Mercer's interview room was colder, darker. A single recorder blinked red. Across from him, Angela Way, the senior vice president of operations, sat composed, every gesture sharp enough to draw blood. "You understand the severity," she said. "I understand I failed." Mercer replied, "Do you know why you failed?" He hesitated. "Because I trusted protocol over perception." Wei leaned forward. "No, Captain, you failed because you thought perception was neutral. It isn't. It's shaped by everything we refuse to acknowledge." Mercer nodded slowly. "My son asked me last night why people stare at him when he holds my hand. I told him they don't. I lied." Wei's expression softened for the first time. "You're not the only one who's lied. Then maybe we stop." Outside, the engines ticked as they cooled, metal contracting, sighing, a plane exhaling guilt. While the interrogations unfolded, the internet rewrote the story. A 20-second clip surfaced, cropped, distorted, captioned, "Executive Plants. Fake racial incident for publicity." Endo, it spread like gasoline meeting spark. Hashtag split justice for 2 Staged flight. Corporate theater. In the PR war room, Lila Vaughn slammed her laptop shut. "They're turning him into a villain." "Of course they are," Jennings said. "That's cheaper than listening." "Should we issue denial?" "No, we issued data." Jennings gestured to a monitor displaying raw cabin footage. "Full release. Every second, every angle. That's radical transparency," Leela said. "It's honesty," Jennings replied. "Let them decide." Torres returned to Adrian's lounge with a tablet in hand. "Mr. Cole, this just went live. I thought you should see it." The screen showed 2 videos side by side, one cropped, one complete. In the full version, Jenna's tone, Mercer's hesitation, the mounting tension all visible. Unedited, Adrian watched quietly as the internet began correcting itself in real time, comments shifting, algorithms bending under evidence. "You knew this would happen," Torres said. "I hoped it would," he answered, "but hope's not a strategy." Torres closed the tablet. "You should know, the company's convening an emergency board meeting. They're calling it the Cole Direct." Adrian gave a dry laugh. "They're good at naming things." "What will you call it?" she asked. He looked out the window, at the tarmac shimmering under heat, on overdue landing. By noon, the gate area had transformed into a stage, microphones, tripods, barricades, the smell of melting asphalt and ambition. Adrian stepped into the glare beside Angela Wei and CEO Jennings. The crowd erupted a storm of questions. Was this entrapment? Is Aerovista facing lawsuits? Do you forgive the crew? Adrian waited for silence that never came, so he created it with the power of steadiness. His voice carried over the chaos, calm and surgical. "This isn't about forgiveness. It's about acknowledgement. What happened on Flight 2847 wasn't a stunt. It was a reflection. We saw what bias looks like when it wears a uniform. We also saw what accountability can look like when it finally takes its seat." Flashes erupted again. His next line cut through them. "We can't control people's hearts, but we can control the systems that excuse them." Behind him, Mercer and Jenna watched from the edge of the crowd. He felt their eyes guilt, fear, something like gratitude. It continued. Effective immediately. Aerovista will launch the Cole Initiative independent audits, body cameras on every flight, third-party reporting, and mandatory bias awareness training for all employees, including executives. A reporter shouted, "And the crew, are they fired?" Adrian looked toward them. Jenna met his gaze, trembling. Mercer stood tall beside her, shoulders squared for the first time since the gate. "They'll face consequences," Adrian said, "but they'll also help us rebuild. Real reform doesn't erase people, it transforms them." That line landed. Even the cameras seemed to hesitate before blinking again. Hours later, the crowd dispersed. The microphones shut off. The terminal quieted to the background noise of ordinary travel announcements, rolling luggage, lives continuing. In a private office overlooking the runway, Mercer placed his pilot's wings on the desk, temporary suspension. Way had said. He accepted it without argument. He stood by the window watching another aircraft lift into the orange sky. He didn't envy it. He only hoped whoever sat in 2 amperes would be treated like a passenger and not a verdict. Jenna knocked softly and entered. They cleared me to go home. HR wants a statement video tomorrow. Mercer turned. You'll do it. I have to, she said. Not for them. For her. She showed a photo on her phone, her daughter, 7, missing a tooth, holding a paper airplane. Mercer nodded. Tell her the truth. I planned to. They stood in silence, watching the runway. For once, silence didn't feel like guilt. It felt like space. That night, Adrian sat in a hotel room overlooking the desert. The sky was bruised purple, the air vibrating with cicadas. His phone pulsed with messages, news requests, congratulations, death threats. He ignored them all. He opened his laptop and began typing a note to himself. Day 0. The fallout begins. Reform isn't a press release. It's repetition. Tomorrow, someone else will board a plane and be judged before takeoff. My job is to make sure the system hesitates before it agrees. He saved the file Flight 2847. Aftermath. Log 1. A knock on the door startled him. When he opened it, Jenna stood there, eyes swollen, but clear. She held out a paper bag. I brought you coffee, she said. Figured you hadn't eaten. He accepted it, uncertain. You didn't have to. I know, she said. That's why I did. For a moment, neither spoke. The desert wind slipped under the door like a whisper of something almost kind. Tomorrow, Adrian said, we start writing the policy. Jenna nodded. And the apology? He gave a tired half smile. Maybe those are the same document. She left. The soft click of the door closing behind her. Adrian sat back down, sipping the bitter coffee. Outside, a plane lifted into the ink sky, its lights drawing a slow, perfect arc. A reminder that flight was still possible after a fall. He whispered to no one, justice at 30,000 feet wasn't the point. The landing was. And for the first time all day, he allowed himself to breathe. Morning in Dallas arrived like glass sharp, reflective, and hot. The headquarters tower shimmered against the heat haze, all steel and light, pretending it could keep the world outside. Inside, the boardroom blinds were half drawn, slicing the sunlight into bars that looked like jail lines across the mahogany table. Adrian Cole stood at the head, jacket off, sleeves rolled, coffee untouched. Across from him, investors, counsel, 2 union reps, 3 board directors, and the COO, Angela Way, calm as if she'd rehearsed this storm. A digital clock above the door ticked 9:00 a.m. The meeting had no agenda slide, just a single title on the screen. Post-Incident Governance Review Flight 2847. Let's begin. Jennings, the CEO, said. His voice carried both authority and exhaustion. Mr. Cole, since you initiated the audit, you'll brief us. Adrian nodded. We're not here to discuss optics. We're here to discuss rot. The Cole Initiative proposes 3 immediate measures: mandatory bias auditing, incident capture technology, and third-party oversight. A director cut him off. You mean body cams and outside eyes in our aircraft? Yes, Adrian said, because sunlight's cheaper than lawsuits. Another director, Richard Vale, leaned forward, silver hair, cufflinks, etched with initials like scars. Adrian, forgive me, but the optics are the problem. You've made this company a global morality play. Stock fell 7% overnight. Investors are bleeding because people saw the truth, Adrian said evenly. Vale's smile didn't reach his eyes because people saw your version of it. Rumors say you engineered that flight. A whisper rippled. Angela Way's pen paused mid-note. Adrian didn't flinch. Rumors come from people who profit from silence. Vale folded his hands. Silence used to keep us flying. Adrian, now it might ground us. Legal counsel cleared his throat. Let's stay factual. Chairman Cole, was Flight 2847 part of an authorized audit? Adrian nodded. Authorized by the Board Ethics Committee 6 months ago. Vale leaned back. Convenient that the Ethics Committee answers to you. Angela's tone sliced the tension. Richard, it also answers to you. You signed off on its creation last year. A few chuckles broke. Nervous and brittle, Adrian clicked a remote. The screen changed graphs of incident reports, lawsuits, cost of settlements. 47 formal complaints this quarter. That's not culture, that's corrosion. I didn't stage a stunt. I flew commercial to measure bias, because reports weren't being filed honestly. Now we have proof. Proof of what? Vale said. That people make mistakes when filmed by activists. Adrian's eyes darkened. Proof that bias is policy when unchecked. He let the silence hang until even the air conditioning seemed to stop humming. Across town, in a beige media prep studio, smelling faintly of coffee and nerves, Jenna Morales and Captain Mercer sat under softbox lights. HR's crisis management consultant, Jillian Roth, paced with a tablet. All right, Jillian said briskly. You'll each read the statements I drafted. Keep tone neutral, apologetics, but not self-flagellating. We're aiming for remorse, not revolution. Mercer frowned. Revolution's what he started. He being, Jillian asked. Chairman Cole, Mercer said. He burned down the flight deck. Jillian's smile was polite. And built you a parachute. Let's rehearse. Jenna stared at her printed script. I regret any misunderstanding that may have caused discomfort. And she looked up. Misunderstanding. I called him a fraud. Language matters. Jillian said. This phrasing mitigates liability. Mitigates humanity too. Yenna murmuret. Jillian's stylus froze. Excuse me. Yenna stood, trembling but steady. If I read this, people will hear corporate noise, not accountability. I'll do it live. My way. Mercer folded the script neatly. Then so will I. Jillian sighed. You'll destroy your defense. Mercer met her eyes. Maybe we need less defense and more decency. Outside the studio glass, a PR intern stopped, pretending to type back in Dallas. A staffer burst into the boardroom mid-sentence. Breaking update, your reform memo just leaked. Social's eating it alive. Jennings pinched the bridge of his nose. Define eating. End of hashtag staged flight is trending. They're saying Flight 2847 was a PR stunt for board control. Vale leaned back. Too calm. Unfortunate narrative. Angela's chaza sharpened. Unfortunate timing. Adrian's phone buzzed. A news anchor's voice echoed faintly through the speaker. Sources claim Chairman Cole orchestrated the confrontation to push new corporate power structures. He muted it. Richard, if you're behind this, Vale smiled faintly. Behind what? A democratic market. Adrian stood. This isn't a market. It's a mirror. You're terrified it's showing your reflection. Vale's voice softened. Dangerously fatherly. Careful. Adrian, mirrors cut both ways. By noon, media vans circled the building. Protesters outside held two conflicting banners, Justice for 2 Amperes and Stop Corporate Theater. Inside, staff whispered in elevators, screens glowing with opinion polls. Angela walked beside Adrian through a corridor lined with framed aviation patents, old photos of men shaking hands, all pale smiles in sepia. "They're building a case that you manipulated the crew," she said. "I manipulated probability." Adrian replied, "Buys, always delivers. Even if you win, they'll call you ruthless. Then they'll be half right." They reached a glass wall overlooking the city. Heat shimmered on the asphalt far below, like a lie trying to stay solid. Angela folded her arms. "There's talk of an emergency shareholder vote to remove me, to study you," she said. "But outcomes blur." Adrian exhaled. "Then we give them data they can't spin." "How?" He looked out the window. "We let the truth go live." Angela re-entered the boardroom as Jennings received a message. His jaw tightened. "What is it?" Vale asked, feigning concern. "Anonymous memo," Jennings said, titled, "The Cole Experiment. Claims the flight was staged, including a fabricated boarding pass." All heads turned to Adrian. "Show it," he said. Jennings hesitated, then tapped the screen. The memo scrolled half-truths, stitched with accurate timestamps, and one forged detail: "Cole boarded under alias. Umbly." Vale whistled. "Colorful." Angela caught his eyes. "You'd know, since your office metadata matches the upload source." The room froze. Vale chuckled. "Are you accusing a director?" "I'm confirming a coward," Angela said. Adrian's voice was calm steel. "End this. Publicly." Jennings looked from one to the other. "Gentlemen, Ms. Way, let's not implode in-house." "Too late," Angela said. "The roof's already off." Adrian's phone buzzed again. This time a direct text from a journalist friend. "Live feed request at 5 p.m. They're coming for you. Take the chair or lose it." He pocketed the phone. "Meeting adjourned." Vale rose slowly. "You'll regret transparency." Adrian met his eyes. "You regret gravity too." At 4:45 p.m., the press auditorium looked like a miniature arena, rows of lights, mic stands, sweat. Reporters murmured like bees. A single podium bore the Aerovista logo, backlit blue. Angela approached. "You have 6 minutes before broadcast. Legal wants a prepared statement. Do they also want a pulse?" Adrian said. She handed him a glass of water. "You don't owe this company martyrdom. I owe it accountability." Angela studied him. "Truth doesn't survive alone in a room like this. It needs witnesses." "I have million," he said. "They just don't trust anymore." She nodded once. "Then remind them why they should." At 4:59, the red light went on. "Good afternoon." Adrian began. No script, no teleprompter. "My name is Adrian Cole. I'm the chairman of Aerovista Airlines. 6 days ago, I boarded flight 2847, not as an executive, but as a passenger, to understand whether the bias we tracked in data was lived by real people. It was. What happened on that plane was not staged. It was recorded reality. Flashes strobed. Cameras clicked like angry applause. Did I know this risked chaos? Yes. Did I know it would humiliate good employees? I didn't expect it to hurt as much as it did. But pain is a teacher companies keep ignoring." He paused. The silence electric. "I'm not here to defend myself. I'm here to declare that accountability doesn't end where comfort begins. Every airline talks about safety. We'll be the first to include dignity in the checklist." A reporter shouted, "Was this about consolidating power?" Adrian looked straight into the lens. "Power means nothing if it can't survive transparency." Another voice. "Are you resigning?" He smiled faintly. "I'm reporting for duty." Angela, watching from the side curtain, exhaled a small, private relief. She mouthed, "Exit lit." The clip went viral within minutes. Not outrage, this time reflection. Headlines split: Cole confesses and rebuilds versus corporate messiah complex. Inside HQ, staff applauded quietly in the cafeteria, golf claps of fear mixed respect. Outside, protesters lowered their signs just to listen. Jenna and Mercer watched from the prep studio. Jenna whispered, "He said what we couldn't." Mercer nodded. "Then we say what comes next." She smiled weakly. "Redemption doesn't trend as well." "No," he said, "but it lands better." That evening, the council reconvened for an emergency vote. One by one, directors pressed digital buttons. Yes. 8. No. 2 abstain. 1. The Cole initiative passed. Vale stood, collected his folder, and left without a word. In the hallway he called someone, voice low. "He's going to drown in his own virtue. Let him." Back inside, Angela looked at Adrian. "Congratulations, Chairman." "Don't congratulate me," he said. "We just raised the altitude. Now we find out who can breathe up here." Angela smiled thinly. "And who'll suffocate." Outside the window, night lights flickered on across Dallas like a constellation rearranging itself. Later, alone in his office, Adrian loosened his tie. The city glowed below traffic ribbons. Screens, miniature lives. He opened his email. A new message blinked. From Jenna Morales. Subject: "You were right about sunlight. Body. But you forgot to warn us it burned." He leaned back, the ache behind his eyes, deep but honest. He typed one line back. "It's supposed to." He hit send. Then he turned off the lights. Through the glass, the reflection of the city merged with his own until he couldn't tell which was which. The night after the broadcast, Dallas never slept. The city's skyline flickered with blue lights and camera drones like electric locusts. Every building seemed to hum with gossip. Aero Vista headquarters was a fortress of glass, surrounded by news vans and protest lines that stretched down Mockingbird Lane. One sign read, "Cole the hero." Another, "Cole the liar." Inside, the 32nd floor looked like an evidence locker. Screens glowed with live coverage. Metrics, crisis, dashboards. Angela Way walked the corridor barefoot, heels dangling from her hand. She'd been awake 30 hours. PR wanted her to spin Adrian's speech as visionary. Legal wanted it limited. HR just wanted a script to fire someone. Adrian was in his office. Shades drawn. The city lights bled through anyway, streaking the glass like veins. A knock. "Come in," he said without looking up. Angela entered. Stock rebounded 2%. Then Vale went on CNBC. Adrian sighed. "Let me guess, called me unstable. Charismatic liability." His exact words. "That's creative." "He also leaked your internal memo on the audit." Adrian rubbed his temples. "So we've crossed from corporate warfare to character assassination." Angela sat. "Welcome to Act 2. By morning, the internet had split into tribes. One side hailed Adrian as the conscience of corporate America. The other branded him a manipulator who faked discrimination for power. Podcasts argued. Talk shows mocked. A political commentator sneered. "If billionaires want moral clarity, maybe stop flying first class pretending to be martyrs." Screens at the airport terminals replayed clips of Flight 2847 like a looped crime scene. At Gate C12, travelers pointed at each other. "You see that guy? That's the airline. That's the one." Even employees turned brittle. Some wore pins with "Dignity takes flight." Others whispered, "He made us the villains." Angela forwarded Adrian a memo, "Threat assessment update." Among the comments, "Union revolt potential. Employee sabotage risk. Board instability high." He read silently, then deleted it. At noon, an assistant barged in. "Sir, someone's leaked your home address online." Adrian froze. "What?" "Social posts. Hundreds of comments, some threatening. Angela called security instantly. Within hours, 2 officers were stationed outside his gated townhouse. Adrian walked through his living room photos of his late wife, her violin in its case, untouched since she died. He stared at the door, half expecting someone to knock again, this time without invitation. By the second week, the hate arrived as physical mail. One letter came with glitter glued to a death threat. Another was an invoice for your moral theater. Angela found him one night in the operations hangar, sitting alone near the grounded 737 used for training. The air smelled of jet fuel and ozone. "You shouldn't be here," she said quietly. "Funny," Adrian replied. "They said the same thing on that plane." She stepped closer. "You look like hell. I keep thinking about the word reform. It sounds clean, but it's blood work." "Angela, you cut into an organism that doesn't want to heal." She sat across from him on the metal stairs. The hangar lights hummed overhead. "Maybe healing starts with infection leaving the body." He almost smiled. "That's poetic." "I'm Chinese," she said. "We invented metaphors before coffee." A beat of shared exhaustion. Then Angela's phone buzzed. She looked down, face tightening. "Adrian, someone torched your car." He blinked. "What?" "Parking lot. Outside your building. Fire department's containing it now. No casualties, but they spray-painted the hood before lighting it." "What did it say?" She hesitated. "Fake hero." Adrian exhaled slowly, as if deflecting. "I guess they watched the wrong movie." Across the country, Jenna Morales scrolled through the same headlines from her small apartment in Phoenix. Her apology video had aired, raw and unfiltered. She'd cried mid-sentence, confessed every bias, begged to do better. The internet was merciless. One comment, "She's acting for sympathy." Another, "Too late." "Racist witch." She muted everything. On her kitchen table sat an envelope. Mandatory relocation notice. Corporate training division. She'd been reassigned to Denver. Not fired. Not forgiven, just moved. Her daughter, 7, colored quietly in the corner. "Mom, are we in trouble?" Jenna forced a smile. "No, honey. We're learning." Her daughter looked up. "Then why do people hate teachers?" Jenna had no answer. In another part of the city, Captain Mercer stood before a disciplinary board. 3 airline officers. 1 HR rep. On a lavier. His hands were steady. His voice was not, "I failed command integrity," he said, "but I followed the only command I'd been trained for: control the situation, not understand it." The HR rep said, "Do you believe race influenced your actions?" Mercer hesitated. "I believe a bit did, and habits are built by systems." The lawyer scribbled something, noted. Outside, reporters waited like vultures. When he emerged, microphones thrust forward. "Captain, do you still trust Cole?" He looked at the swarm and said, "I trust turbulence more. At least it's honest." Back at HQ, Vale was on a fence again. He'd secured allies: 2 shareholders, 1 congressman, and a whisper campaign. Cole overstepped fiduciary duty. He's bleeding capital for crusadas. In a private call, Vale told a reporter, "He's turning airlines into sermon. The public wants travel, not theology." By week's end, congressional oversight announced an ethics hearing on Aerovista's discrimination incident. Adrian was subpoenaed to testify in D.C. Angela cornered him in the elevator. "They'll eat you alive." He pressed the floor button, then let them chew carefully. "Adrian, this isn't martyrdom, it's trap politics. They'll twist your reforms into personal gain. Maybe the truth can survive a twist." The doors opened. Outside, flashes paparazzi waiting. He turned back. "You don't have to stand next to me." Angela straightened her blazer. "Yes, I do." They stepped into the storm. The Capitol hearing was theater with microphones under marble lights. Adrian sat before a semicircle of lawmakers, cameras humming like bees. Behind him, reporters, lobbyists, union reps, families of employees. The chairwoman adjusted her glasses. Mr. Cole, the committee thanks you for attending. Do you confirm that you personally engineered a situation on Flight 2847 to expose potential discrimination? I confirm, Adrian said, that I boarded my own airline to see whether data matched experience. A senator smirked. You call that fieldwork. I call it empathy under pressure. Laughter from one corner. Another senator leaned in. Your critics say you staged this to consolidate power, that you humiliated employees for leverage. Adrian Metterhaze. I didn't humiliate them. I revealed what already humiliated us as a company, the comfort of assumption. The chairwoman tapped her pen. Mr. Cole, is it true? Aerovista lost nearly $1 billion in market cap during your initiative. Yes. Then how can you justify? He interrupted gently. Because markets recover, morality doesn't. Unse lost. The room still. Angela sat behind him, watching the faces half anger, half awe. For a brief second, even the cameras seemed to stop breathing. After the hearing, as they exited through the marble lobby, security swarmed. Someone shouted Adrian's name. Then the sound crack, a flash, a sharp sting of air pressure. Panic erupted. Reporters dove. Angela shoved him down. A bullet shattered the pillar behind them, raining marble dust. Secret Service tackled a man near the crowd, a disheveled ex-employee clutching a homemade sign, liar in seat, 2 amperes, sirens wail. Angela's blazer was torn. Blood streaked Adrian's wrist, a shallow graze. She grabbed his collar. You all right? He nodded, breathing hard. They're aiming for silence. She stared at the chaos. Then we speak louder. 1 hours later, in a D.C. hospital room, the city lights flickered through blinds like faint Morse code. Angela sat in the chair beside his bed, still dusty from the marble debris. He broke the silence. You could have been killed. So could you? She said. But you're too stubborn for death. He smiled faintly. Maybe, but not immune to exhaustion. She reached into her pocket, pulling a folded napkin with blood spots. Souvenir from the hearing. He looked at it. Keep it. Proof we didn't flinch. The nurse came in to change the IV. On the bedside TV, headlines scrolled. Assassination attempt fails. Cole stable. Aerovista stock surges 11%. Angela watched the numbers climb. They're buying your blood now. Good. Adrian murmured. It's overpriced. He turned his head toward the window. Outside, the Lincoln Memorial glowed white, silent, indifferent. For the first time in weeks, he closed his eyes. Back in Phoenix, Jenna's phone buzzed with the same headline. She froze mid-step in the hallway of a training center. A video played of the shooting. For a moment, she couldn't breathe. Then she whispered, "He almost died fixing what I broke." She called Mercer. "You saw?" "Yeah. I'm flying to D.C." He paused. "You sure you're ready?" "No," she said, "but I'm done hiding." 2 days later, Adrian was discharged. The wound on his arm was minor, the scars invisible under the cuff of his shirt, but something inside him had shifted the understanding that reform had drawn blood, literal and symbolic. As the car drove him back to the hotel, he looked out at the Potomac shimmering under streetlights. His reflection merged with the water, ghostly and unsteady. His phone buzzed again. A message from an unknown number. "Truth is turbulence, and you're still airborne." He smiled slightly, not sure whether it was meant as a threat or a blessing. The car passed the airport perimeter fence. He could see a plane ascending into the night sky, lights steady, wings cutting through invisible currents, for the first time since flight. 2, 8, 4, 7, Adrian whispered to himself. Let it fly straight this time. Washington, D.C. was gray that morning, the kind of light that made marble look like bone. Jenna Morales stepped off the 7 a.m. shuttle, clutching a duffel bag that still smelled faintly of jet fuel and anxiety. The city buzzed with the low hum of politics, black cars, camera lenses, whispers pretending to be questions. She hadn't seen Adrian Cole since the day her career imploded in front of 180,000 live stream viewers. Now she was here because she couldn't watch him take the blame alone. A driver held up a placard, "Morals, visitor permit." Inside the car, she caught glimpses of TV screens through cafe windows. The same headline everywhere: Cole survives. Shooting questions. Mount. On one channel, a pundit sneered, "You don't end racism with theater, you end it with leadership." Another countered, "He was leading, and they tried to kill him for it." Jenna's reflection in the window blurred over the Capitol dome. She whispered, "Guess truth really does fly too close to the sun." Adrian was back at George Washington University Hospital, technically cleared for discharge, but refusing to leave until his statement for the press was written. Angela Way sat near the window, laptop open, fielding non-stop calls. "You look worse than the gunman," she said. He smirked faintly. "He only fired once. Your inbox has fired 200 times. Adrian ignored her and kept typing. His arm still bore a thin line of surgical tape. The wound had closed, but the ache wasn't physical. "We need to draft new language for the Dignity Act," he said. The hearing rattled people. "We need reform that can survive lawyers." Angela closed her laptop. "Reform doesn't survive bullets." "Adrian, people do." "Barely." Before he could reply, a nurse peeked in. "You have a visitor, Ms. Morales." Angela froze. Adrian's pen stopped midair. "Send her in," he said softly. Jenna stepped inside like someone walking into a courtroom. Her eyes caught the bandage first. "I saw the news," she said quietly. "Didn't believe it until now. I'm harder to cancel than that." Adrian replied. They both tried to smile. Neither managed. Angela stood. "I'll give you 2 privacy." When the door closed, silence filled the sterile room, the kind that hums louder than noise. Jenna spoke first. "I came to say what I didn't say on that flight. I was wrong." Adrian met her eyes. "You said that already. To the cameras. This time it's to you." He nodded. "Then say it. I saw a man I didn't understand, and assumed danger because the system trained me to." "You didn't expose me." "Adrian, you exposed the water we were swimming in." He studied her, voice even. "You think exposure changes it. I think it starts there." A long pause. Then Adrian exhaled. "Sight down." "Jenna." She did. "Do you still believe in the airline?" he asked. "Not the one I worked for, but the one you're trying to build, maybe." He nodded once. "Then I need you back." Jenna blinked. "What?" "I'm assembling a human factors unit oversight from the inside. I need people who've seen the mirror crack." Her throat tightened. "You'd trust me." "I'd trust anyone who's bled from their own guilt and kept walking." Jenna wiped a tear, half laughing. "That's the worst job interview I've ever passed." He smiled. "Welcome to turbulence." Across town, Richard Vail was in a private meeting at the Capitol View Hotel, seated across from 2 men in tailored suits and 1 woman with a congressional ID clipped to her lapel. "Cole's martyr act is costing us control," Vale said, swirling the ice in his whiskey. The committee hearing only made him sympathetic. The woman, Congresswoman Denby, sharp smile, colder eyes leaned forward. Sympathy fades when evidence appears. And what evidence do you have? One of the suits asked. She slid a folder across the table. Inside screenshots, emails, security footage, fabricated but surgical in their detail. Vale scanned the first page. Internal memo suggesting Cole pre-coordinated the discrimination incident with PR. He whistled. You forged this, Denby smirked. I prefer the term narrative alignment. We'll leak it before Friday. Vale nodded slowly. Then by next week, his halo becomes a noose. At 2:14 a.m. Friday, a whistleblower blog published leaked memos reveal Cole's PR manipulation scheme. By dawn, every news outlet ran with it. The so-called proof included fake timestamps, showing internal emails from Adrian's account, scheduling a controlled conflict scenario weeks before Flight 2847. Quai Blancourt pounced. Was the moral outrage manufactured? Did the chairman exploit race to boost his power? By noon, the stock dropped 6%. Hashtag Cole Conspiracy trended worldwide. Angela stormed into Adrian's office, laptop in hand. They forged you, she said. Digital signature spoof. Even the metadata looks clean. Adrian read the post in silence. They're good, he murmured. Too good. Vale, she said. It has his fingerprints all over it. Adrian leaned back, exhaustion flattening his tone. Then he's ready to burn the company to bury the truth. Angela slammed the laptop shut. Then we burn brighter. That night, Jenna walked through the lobby of Aerovista HQ, now a minefield of reporters and protesters. As she approached security, someone shouted, "That's her, the racist flight attendant." Phones rose like weapons. Flashes hit her face. A voice jeered, "Smile for your next apology video." Her hands shook. She kept walking. In the elevator, she whispered to her reflection, "Don't flinch." But her body betrayed her trembling. Breath quick. The echo of humiliation, like static under her skin. When she reached Adrian's floor, she found Angela waiting. "You shouldn't come through the front entrance." "I'm done hiding," Yenna said. "I'm not a ghost." Angela studied her. "Then let's make sure you don't become one." It happened 3 nights later. Adrian's chief analyst, Tom Hensley, a quiet, data-obsessed man who'd helped expose systemic bias patterns, was driving home from the airport after a red-eye inspection. His car never made it past the toll bridge. Police report vehicle explosion. Suspected arson. No witnesses. No suspects. When Angela told Adrian, he didn't speak for 30 seconds. "Then they're escalating." "Tom was targeted," she said. "His laptop's missing." Adrian's hands tightened. That laptop had every model predictive bias, crew behavior, mapping. If Vale gets it, he already has it. Angela interrupted. Silence. Then Adrian whispered, "Tom died for numbers. That's how systems kill, through equations that forget the human weight behind them." He stood, walked to the window, and pressed his hand to the glass. The city glowed below, distant, cold, merciless. "Prepare a statement," he said. Angela frowned. "To the press, to the staff," Adrian said. "We bury him as one of our own, with truth." 2 days later, the company held a memorial in a hangar at Dallas Love Field. Rows of employees stood between grounded aircraft and wreaths of white lilies. The smell of jet fuel mixed with carnations, steel, and grief. Adrian stood at the microphone, voice raw but steady. Tom Hensley wasn't a face on a spreadsheet. He was the conscience behind one. He believed data could be moral if handled by moral hands. He paused, scanning the crowd. "We're told progress demands sacrifice. But progress should never need a body count. Jenna stood near the back, eyes glistening. Angela beside her, silent. Even Vale attended, face stone cold, pretending sympathy for the cameras. When the ceremony ended, Adrian walked straight to him. "Enjoy the press coverage?" he asked. Vala didn't blink. "I came to pay respects. Tom had a family, so does the company." Adrian stepped closer. "You didn't just kill a man, you killed your own legacy." Vale smiled faintly. "Legacy's just a word people use when they've already lost." He turned and left, his reflection sliding off the polished metal of the jet fuselage like a ghost escaping light. That night, Adrian sat alone in his hotel suite overlooking the runway. Planes lifted and vanished into the dark lights blinking, swallowed by clouds. He poured whiskey, didn't drink it. The glass sweat pooled on the table. His phone buzzed. Message from Angela. "Board emergency session tomorrow. They're voting on your suspension." He stared at it. Then another notification, a video uploaded anonymously. Thumbnail Vale shaking hands with Congresswoman Denby. Caption proof of collusion. "The coal smear." He smiled, bitter but alive. "You shouldn't have filmed the monster if you didn't want daylight." He forwarded it to every journalist on his contact list. Then he deleted his drink, poured coffee instead. The next day, HQ was chaos. Reporters stormed the lobby. Staff whispered like conspirators. Angela met him at the elevator, pale but determined. The footage went viral overnight. Vala's panicking. "Good," Adrian said. "He finally knows what it feels like." They entered the boardroom. Cameras flashed. Vale sat stiffly at the far end, Denby's face on a video feed behind him, expression cracking under the weight of exposure. Jennings, the CEO, slammed a folder shut. "Enough. This company's not a courtroom." Adrian's gaze was calm. "Then stop committing crimes." The vote began. Digital panels blinked. Result: suspend Chairman Cole. No. Investigate Vale. Denby, yes, unanimous. Vale stood abruptly. "This isn't over," Adrian replied. "No. Richard. This is recorded." Security escorted him out. The boardroom exhaled as if oxygen had returned after months underwater. Angela turned to Adrian. "You just survived assassination and impeachment in the same week." He gave a weary smile. "Then I'm overdue for turbulence." That night, as rain slid down the windows, Adrian walked through the empty terminal of Love Field. The PA system murmured final boarding calls. The air smelled of coffee and disinfectant. He stopped at gate C-12, the same gate where Flight 2847 had once departed. The seats were empty now, just reflections of light and memory. He whispered, "Tom, you were right. Systems don't fail people. People fail systems." His phone vibrated, a message from Jenna. "We're still flying, Captain." He typed back, "Then keep your hands steady." The next storm's ours to navigate. Outside the glass, a plane lifted through the rain, its wingtips glowing like tiny promises against the dark. He watched until it disappeared into the clouds. 2 weeks after Vale's removal, Washington braced for another televised hearing, this time not to crucify Adrian Cole, but to question an entire culture. Outside the Capitol, protest lines snaked around the reflecting pool. Some held signs reading "Justice at 30,000 feet." Others shouted for resignations or reforms, or both. Camera drones swarmed like gnats in humid air. The marble steps gleamed from morning rain, as if the building itself were sweating. Angela and Jenna arrived together, both in dark suits. Security wands beeped over their bags. Flashbulbs cracked in rhythm. A journalist called out, "Ms. Morales, are you here as witness or accomplice?" Jenna stopped. "As proof people can change, Adrian was already inside the hearing chamber. His bandaged wrist peeked from under his cuff, a silent reminder of bullets and survival. He looked up at the ceiling fresco angels holding scales of justice and whispered, "Let's see if heaven's watching." The committee chair banged the gavel. This hearing of the United States Transportation Oversight Subcommittee is now in session. Behind her, two screens displayed the logos of Aerovista Airlines and the U.S. Department of Transportation side by side, like adversaries. Forced to share a coffin, Chairwoman Dalton spoke crisply. This hearing concerns corporate misconduct, workplace discrimination, and allegations of deliberate fraud, involving former Executive Vice President Richard Vail and Congresswoman Elise Denby. Our purpose is simple: to determine whether truth in commerce can survive politics in power. The air tightened. Denby sat 3 rows behind her lawyers. Stone-faced, her congressional ID clipped like a scar. Vail, in a gray suit, looked almost defiant until the camera light hit his face, and his eyes flickered like a cornered animal. Chairwoman Dalton turned to Adrian. "Mr. Cole, as current chairman of Aerovista, do you swear to tell the truth?" "I do," he said. "Then let's begin." Angela wheeled in a small digital kiosk. On screen appeared a timeline: Flight 2847, employee logs, BS reports, complaint analytics. She narrated calmly, 47 discrimination complaints in 1 quarter, each unresolved. Mr. Cole's experiment exposed the human cost of our inaction. Senator Brooks interjected. "And what of the forged emails? The so-called Cole conspiracy?" Angela clicked to the next slide, metadata readout. Timestamp comparisons, IP traces. These were generated from a private server registered to Vail Consulting LLC. The digital signature pretending to be Cole's came from that domain. Independent forensics confirm it. Vail's lawyer objected. Circumstantial. Angela cut him off. "No, mathematical." The screen zoomed in on a line of hexadecimal code. "In cybersecurity," she said, "we call this a fingerprint. And this one belongs to Richard Vail." A collective murmur rippled across the room. Chairwoman Dalton leaned forward. "Mr. Vail, would you like to respond?" Vail adjusted his tie, sweat at his temple. "Mistakes were made, but I was defending shareholder value against a reckless executive by killing an employee." Adrian's voice cut across like a blade. Gasps. Cameras snapped. Dalton raised her gavel. "Mr. Cole." Adrian didn't stop. "Tom Hensley died because someone decided data was worth more than decency. That decision didn't come from a rogue algorithm. It came from this man." He pointed directly at Vail. The room fell silent, the kind of silence that shakes glass. Dalton turned to the next witness. "Congresswoman Denby, you are under oath." Denby's jaw tightened. "My office merely sought to verify Aerovista's integrity by leaking fabricated evidence to discredit a federal hearing." Denby hesitated. Her lawyer whispered, "Fifth Amendment." But the chairwoman smiled thinly. "Congresswoman, you misunderstand. This isn't a trial, it's television. Every silence is guilt on replay." Denby's composure cracked. "Vale promised me." She stopped too late. The microphones caught it. C-SPAN's live captions typed the words in real time. "Vail promised me." The public gasped before the network even finished the sentence. Vail's attorney paled. Vail whispered, "You idiot." Chairwoman Dalton banged her gavel. "Strike that from record." "But nothing is ever struck from the internet." "Ms. Morales," Dalton said, "step forward." Yenna rose. Cameras zoomed in. Flashes exploded. She stood where she'd once fallen under scrutiny, in front of power. Her voice trembled at first. My name is Jenna Morales. I was the flight attendant who misjudged Mr. Flight 2847. Dalton nodded. Proceed. I called security because I thought he didn't belong. I said the words, people like him don't usually fly first class. I wish I could erase them, but I can't. What I can do is own them. She paused, tears glistening. That moment wasn't an accident. It was the sum of 1,000 quiet lessons society teaches you: who looks safe, who looks dangerous, who deserves comfort. I learned wrong, and unlearning costs everything. One reporter whispered, she's shaking, but Jenna steadied herself. I'm here because he gave me a second chance. Because reform isn't revenge, it's rehabilitation. Applause broke protocol. The chairwoman didn't stop it. When Jenna stepped down, Adrian met her eyes and mouthed, "Thank you." For the first time in months, she smiled without guilt. Angela tapped her tablet. "Madam Chair, with your permission, we'd like to submit one final piece of evidence." Dalton nodded. The overhead screens flickered, then rolled a hidden camera clip, Vale and Denby in a private bar. Voices low but clear. Vale, we'll leak the memo Friday. That'll bury him before the audit clears. Denby, and if he pushes back, Vale, then we give the press what they want. A black hero who played the race card. The words hung in the air like poison gas. Denby's lawyer lunged for the plug, shouting, "Illegally obtained." Dalton raised a hand. "Cite down. Counselor, America's listening." Vale slammed his briefcase shut. "This is entrapment." Adrian's voice was calm. "No, Richard, this is exposure." The audience erupted. Reporters sprinted for exits to file stories. Dalton let the noise ride for 10 seconds before gaveling hard. "Order! Order!" She turned to the defendants. "This committee will be recommending full criminal investigation under federal corruption statutes. Mr. Vale, Ms. Denby, you are dismissed. Permanently." Security escorted them out, cameras following like executioners. When the room cleared, Dalton leaned back. "Mr. Cole, before we adjourn after all this, what keeps you fighting?" Adrian thought for a long moment. "Because I sat in a seat I paid for, and was still asked to prove I belong. I'm fighting for the day no one has to explain their humanity at check-in." Dalton's expression softened. "That's not policy. That's poetry." Adrian smiled faintly. "Sometimes they're the same thing." Outside the chamber, the noise of media and protest melted into a dull hum. Angela walked beside Adrian, her phone vibrating non-stop. "You just became the most quoted man in America again." He grinned. "Tell the algorithm to rest. I'm exhausted." Jenna caught up to them, breathless. "They're calling it The Reckoning. The networks want interviews." "Let them," Adrian said, "but make them interview you first." "Me?" Jenna blinked. "You lived the transformation. I just triggered it." She hesitated, then nodded. "All right, but you'll regret giving me a microphone." "I already do." He laughed. They stepped into sunlight. For the first time in months, it didn't feel like interrogation. That night, Denby resigned in disgrace. Vale was arrested for obstruction of justice and corporate fraud. Aerovista's stock soared 15%, but Adrian barely noticed. He spent the evening rereading Tom Hensley's last email, a single line he'd written weeks before his death. "If we ever make truth visible, someone will try to blind it." He closed his laptop and whispered, "We made them blink." Tom. Weeks later, in Dallas, the first Dignity Training Center opened a converted hangar filled with simulation cabins, holographic passengers, and data interfaces tracking unconscious bias in real time. Reporters called it the School of Empathy. Angela walked through the corridor with Jenna, watching new recruits practice scenarios a Muslim woman boarding, a disabled veteran, a transgender traveler. Each interaction recorded, replayed, corrected. Jenna smiled faintly. We used to train for turbulence. Now we train for decency. Angela replied. Turbulence was easier. They stopped at a plaque near the entrance. The Hensley Initiative, founded in honor of truth that cost too much. A faint shadow moved in the doorway. Adrian, dressed in civilian clothes, carrying a tablet under one arm. You ready to brief the press? Angela asked. He nodded. Let's make this the last company that needs such a school. Jenna adjusted her badge. That's optimism. He looked at the hangar, sunlight spilling across rows of trainee uniforms. No, that's gravity. Truth always falls to earth eventually. A voice over the PA echoed Simulation 12 cleared for takeoff. The cabin doors closed. Engines hummed, not real, but hopeful. Adrian turned to watch them taxi forward on rails, toward the horizon mural painted on the far wall. For one fleeting moment, it looked real. A plane rising toward clean sky. The video went viral again, but this time for the right reasons. A compilation of ordinary people, gate agents, flight attendants, passengers, stopping by us in real time. One clip showed Jenna interrupting a colleague. He's not lost. He's just human. Another, a captain shaking hands with a passenger in a wheelchair, saying, You don't need clearance to belong. The final image was Adrian on stage at a global summit. Voice steady, tired but bright. We can't unwrite prejudice, but we can outfly it. Cut to black. White text appeared on screen, dedicated to everyone who asked the right question before it was too late. The sunrise over Dallas-Fort Worth shimmered gold through smog. That particular hue between redemption and residue. Adrian Cole stood on the balcony of the newly built Aerovista Human Integrity campus, coffee in hand, shirt sleeves rolled up. From here, he could see training hangars stretching like metallic cathedrals, each bearing the new motto in silver lettering. Dignity takes flight. Below, hundreds of recruits lined up for morning orientation. Their badges caught the light like constellations. Some smiled nervously. Others whispered, That's him, the chairman from Flight 2847. Angela approached from behind, holding 2 tablets and the weight of 5 deadlines. You've got a press panel in 40 minutes, a call with the transportation secretary at 10, and a private tour with the NAACP delegation at noon. Adrian sipped his coffee. And at any point, do I get to be human? She smirked. You traded that for accountability. He laughed softly. Fair. They watched the recruits salute the training flag, a stylized outline of an airplane wing folded into a handshake. Look at them, Angela murmured. Every one of them saw that video. Every one of them thinks they'll never make that mistake. They will, Adrian said, but maybe they'll correct it faster. Inside Hangar 3, Captain Derek Mercer walked along a row of simulator cockpits. He'd aged more silver in his beard, more heaviness in his eyes, but his posture remained military precise. All right, he said to the class of trainees, today we don't learn flight paths, we learn humility. A murmur of confusion. He paced. You all saw the headlines. You know my name? For 23 years I thought procedure protected me. But procedure without perception is blindness with paperwork. He pointed to a young recruit. You, if a passenger refuses to deplane but remains calm, what do? Follow escalation protocol. Seer. Wrong. Mercer said, you listen. You ask why. Protocol comes after understanding. If you start with control, you'll end with chaos. He paused. I know. I lived it. At the back of the room, Jenna Morales watched silently, clipboard in hand. After class, Mercer approached her. Never thought we'd be co-workers again. Never thought I'd want to be, she replied. He smiled faintly. Guess we're both in turbulence rehab. Do you think they believe us? She asked, watching the trainees pack up. They don't have to, Mercer said. They just have to remember us. That afternoon, Adrian met with a group of investors inside a private hangar converted into a glass conference dome. The light outside fractured through its panels, creating a kaleidoscope across the table. One of the investors, a severe woman with diamond glasses, leaned forward. Mr. Cole, your ethics initiative is admirable, but it's cutting into margins. How long do you plan to keep it mandatory? As long as discrimination is still profitable, he said. She frowned. Morality doesn't pay dividends. It does, Adrian countered, just not in your quarter. Another investor chimed in. You've turned Aero Vista into a social experiment. You're alienating old money. Then let's attract better money. The diamond glasses woman stood. You'll lose the board. He didn't blink. Then they'll lose me. Silence. The kind that only comes when someone realizes the game changed while they weren't watching. That night, the campus was quiet, except for the hum of janitorial drones. Adrian sat in his office, reviewing performance metrics. Employee retention up 19%. Bias-related complaints down 68%. Customer satisfaction up 34%. And yet, he couldn't shake the feeling that the numbers were lying or maybe just incomplete. Angela entered, dropping her laptop bag on the chair. You skipped dinner again. I'm full on spreadsheets, he replied. She leaned against the desk. You ever think about what happens when you leave? I don't plan to. You will. Everyone does. What happens then? Does this collapse without you? Adrian looked at her, eyes tired but alive. Then I failed. No, Angela said gently. Then you were human. He smiled at that. Maybe I prefer being necessary to being mortal. Spoken like every reformer before burnout. Remind me to hire you as my conscience. Already on payroll, she said. They shared a silence that felt earned, like two climbers finally sitting at the summit, aware of how far they'd almost fallen. 3 weeks later, during a routine training flight simulation, an alert blared through the intercom. Emergency Hangar 2. Adrian and Angela rushed over. Inside, a young trainee was crying, headset dangling, as an instructor yelled, "You people never listen." The entire hangar froze. Every eye turned to the instructor, a white man in his 50s with a military haircut. Adrian approached calmly. Repeat that. The instructor realized too late that microphones were still recording. I said. He swallowed. These new hires are too sensitive. Everything's racism now. Adrian's voice dropped an octave. Your name, Glenn Patterson, former Delta chief trainer. You hired me. Angela checked her tablet. Not for long. Come on. Patterson sneered. You're really firing me for words. For revealing what you haven't unlearned, Adrian said quietly, and for reminding us this isn't cured. It's chronic. Patterson smirked. You can't fix people, Cole. You just make them quieter. Good, Adrian said. Silence is safer than poison. He turned to the trainees. You saw that. Learn from it. Reform isn't a memo, it's maintenance. As security escorted Patterson out, Jenna whispered to Angela, You think it ever ends? Angela sighed. Not if we're doing it right. That night, a courier delivered an envelope marked personal. Inside a child's drawing, it showed a plane with smiling faces of different colors, holding hands across the windows. Underneath, in wobbly crayon letters, Thank you for making the sky safe for everyone. Signed, Lila Mercer, age 8. Adrian stared at it for a long time, then pinned it above his desk, right next to the framed flight. Manifest from Flight 2847. At 2 amperes, M. Adrian found Mercer in the hangar again, staring at the parked training jet. "She drew you?" Adrian asked, holding up the letter. Mercer nodded. "She said I was the pilot who learned feelings." That's better than most of my reviews." They both chuckled softly, the kind of laughter that comes only after surviving shame. Mercer grew serious. "Do you ever worry this all goes away when the cameras turn off?" "Every day," Adrian admitted. "But change doesn't live in headlines. It lives in habits." He looked at the jet, its nose pointed toward the darkness. "We taught machines to fly before we learned to look at each other. Maybe this is the correction." Mercer extended a hand. "For what it's worth, I'm proud to fly under your sky." Adrian shook it. "Let's make sure it's everyone's sky." Later that week, Angela discovered an internal memo flagged by cybersecurity. "Unauthorized access attempt. Legacy Veil credentials." She stormed into Adrian's office. "Someone's probing the old servers." From inside, who? Could be remnants of his network. Could be copycats. He closed his laptop slowly. "Expose corruption, and you become its favorite target." "You want me to trace it?" "No," he said. "Let them look. Let them see transparency hurts less than silence." Angela frowned. "That's not strategy. That's faith." "Same thing sometimes," he murmured. Weeks later, Aerovista's first public redemption flight took off, an initiative offering free passage to families wronged by past discrimination cases. Adrian, Yenna, Mercer, and Angela boarded quietly among ordinary passengers. No press, no announcements. Just humanity at altitude. Jenna sat beside a young black mother with 2 kids. "First time flying," the woman nodded nervously. "Always wanted to, never felt welcome." Yenna smiled. "You are now." When the seatbelt light dimmed, the passengers applauded spontaneously, not for the flight, but for being seen. Angela leaned toward Adrian. "You realize you just turned a plane into a sermon." He smiled. "As long as it lands safely." Outside the window, clouds parted, revealing the curve of the earth, blue, endless, forgiving. As the aircraft descended, Adrian looked around the cabin. Mercer teaching a child how to fold a napkin like a paper plane. Jenna laughing with a passenger. Angela typing yet another report but humming softly. Have felt, for the first time in years, that he wasn't carrying the sky alone. The landing gear touched the runway with a soft thud. Applause again, unprompted. Authentic. He turned to the intercom, pressed the button, and spoke quietly. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is your captain speaking. Today, we landed more than a plane. We landed proof that decency still flies." Later that night, back at headquarters, Adrian walked the empty halls. The overhead lights dimmed automatically, leaving only the hum of distant machinery. He stopped before the plaque by the main entrance, the one bearing his name. He traced the letters, then whispered, "This was never mine." Angela appeared behind him. "It was never supposed to be." He turned. "Then maybe we did it right." Outside, a plane took off, engines roaring into the dark. Its contrails caught the moonlight, twin ribbons of silver cutting through black sky. He watched until they vanished, then whispered, "Justice doesn't arrive by flight number. It arrives when someone refuses to look away." And somewhere, miles above, another passenger looked out their window, saw the horizon burn pink, and believed, for a moment, that the sky truly belonged to everyone. 6 months later, dawn crept over the Arizona desert like a soft confession. The tarmac shimmered with heat. Though the sun had barely risen, a lone aircraft stood on runway 7, tail fin painted in the new Aerovista livery, silver wings interlaced with a white thread, like a stitched wound finally healing. Adrian Cole stood beside the hangar doors, suitcase in one hand, resignation letter in the other. He'd already signed it, effective immediately. Angela appeared, holding 2 coffees. "You're really doing this?" she said quietly. He nodded. "Time for other captains. The board begged you to stay. They don't need me anymore. That's the point." A gust of hot air rolled across the field. The scent of jet fuel mixed with desert sage, sharp, cleansing. Adrian took a slow sip of coffee, the taste metallic and honest. "I built a system that outlived me," he murmured. "That's legacy." "Right," Angela smiled. "Or illusion. Depends who runs it next." He looked toward the plane. "Then let's test that." Inside the hangar, a graduation ceremony was underway. Rows of new recruits in crisp Navy uniforms. Laptops open, cameras recording. Jenna Morales stood at the podium, voice steady. 6 months ago, this was a dream scribbled on a napkin that empathy could be trained. Today, you're proof it can be practiced. She gestured to the hangar wall, where the Morrison-Martinez Protocol logo glowed faintly. "And remember, every time you board a plane, you carry more than passengers. You carry proof that learning is possible." Applause filled the cavernous room. Mercer stepped forward, saluting the class. "If procedure is your compass," he said, "then compassion is your runway. Don't take off without both." When the ceremony ended, Adrian stood in the back, unseen. He watched Jenna wipe her eyes as the recruits pinned their badges. Mercer caught Adrian's gaze and nodded a silent, "We'll guard the sky." Later that afternoon, a journalist from 60 Minutes sat across from Adrian in his nearly empty office. Boxes half-packed, the walls bare except for one framed drawing a child's crayon airplane holding hands across windows. "Thank you for making the sky safe." The interviewer, Claire Rendon, switched on the mic. "Mr. Cole, why resign now? You won." He chuckled. "Justice isn't a trophy, it's maintenance, and I'm tired." "You changed an industry." "No," Adrian corrected softly. "We admitted it needed changing. That's different." She leaned forward. "Do you believe bias can ever be eliminated?" He thought for a long time. "No, but we can make it visible, and visibility is the first step to accountability." Claire hesitated, then asked, "And what about forgiveness?" Adrian smiled faintly. "Forgiveness is the only renewable fuel we've got." That evening, Angela stormed into his office holding a tablet. "Adrian, you need to see this." On-screen security footage from a check-in counter in Chicago. A young gate agent rolled her eyes at an elderly passenger struggling with English, then muttered something barely audible, but unmistakable. Adrian's jaw tightened. Already, Angela said. "Viral in 3 hours. Still flying blind." He sighed. "One incident doesn't undo progress, but it shows how fragile it is." She countered. "You leave now. The press will say the system collapses without its hero. Then let them. Heroes are myths. We need mortals who keep showing up." He shut off the screen. "Tomorrow, issue a statement. No defense, just admission. We failed again and we'll fix it again." Angela looked at him, eyes soft. "You really believe redemption is infinite?" He smiled sadly. "It has to be. Otherwise, none of this was worth it." That night, Adrian wandered the darkened campus one last time. Rain tapped the metal roof like Morse code. He stopped in front of Simulator 12, the one used for empathy training. Through the glass, he saw a single trainee practicing alone, headset glowing blue. On the monitor, a virtual passenger appeared, a woman in a hijab. Voice trembling, "They always search my bag first." The simulation said. The trainee hesitated, then responded softly, "I'm sorry. That shouldn't happen." The program paused. Flashing empathy. Achieved 95%. Adrian smiled faintly. "Maybe we're learning He slipped his resignation letter under the simulator console, a secret goodbye to the machine that would outlast him. Outside, Jenna waited by the curb, umbrella in hand, leaving without saying goodbye. "That's very CEO of you," he grinned, trying to avoid speeches. "Too late," she said, pulling out a folded napkin. "Found this in the training lounge. Thought you'd want it back. It was old, stained. Edges frayed the original napkin on which he'd scribbled. Flight 2-8-4-7. Dignity test." He traced the ink with his thumb. "Feels like another lifetime." "Because it was," Yenna said. "We're not the people we were on that plane. Maybe that's the real miracle." She nodded. "So where will you go?" "Anywhere they still need proof humanity worked." She smiled. "That's everywhere." Angela found him just before boarding his farewell flight. Rain drummed on the fuselage like applause. "I never told you," she said quietly. "The day you almost got removed from that flight, I was on the operations team that flagged your ticket. I didn't stop them." Adrian looked at her for a long moment. "You stopped them eventually." "Too late," she whispered. "Maybe not," he said. "We're standing here, aren't we?" Angela's eyes glistened. "I just want you to know I learned. That's all I ever wanted anyone to do," he said softly. They hugged, the kind of hug that carries every word two people never said. Boarding was quiet. No press. No ceremony. Adrian chose a seat by the window, 2 amperes. Of course. The new flight attendant, barely 20, approached nervously. "Mr. Cole, it's an honor to have you on board." He smiled. "The honor's mutual. You're flying the future." As the plane taxied, he glanced around. No one stared at him. No one questioned his seat. He felt invisible again, but in the right way this time. The intercom crackled. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is Captain Morales. Welcome aboard flight 2848 to Washington. Estimated flight time, 3 hours 20. Adrian blinked. Morales. Jenna's last name. He smiled. Perfect symmetry. 30,000 feet above. The clouds stretched like pale continents. Adrian opened his tablet not to check stock prices or news feeds, but to reread an old message. "Every time you speak up, justice gets louder." "Emma Morgan." He whispered to the window. "Still flying." "Emma." A young passenger across the aisle caught his eye. A white teenager filming a TikTok about the legend of Flight 2847. Adrian chuckled softly. History, rewritten as content, but at least it lived. Then, the intercom buzzed. "We'd like to recognize a very special passenger aboard today, Mr. Adrian Cole, architect of the Dignity Initiative." Applause filled the cabin. He shook his head, embarrassed, then pressed the call button. When the flight attendant arrived, he said, "Please, no more legends. Just land safely." She grinned. "Yes, sir." As the plane began its descent into D.C., turbulence rocked the cabin. The lights flickered once, a small electrical hiccup, and passengers gasped. Adrian instinctively reached out, steadying the person beside him, an elderly man gripping the armrest. "It's all right," Adrian said calmly. "Just the sky reminding us who's boss." The man smiled shakily. "You sound like a pilot." "Just a passenger who's learned patience," Adrian replied. The plane leveled, and the cabin exhaled in unison. Through the window, the Potomac curved like a vein of silver, feeding the heart of the capital. He thought of Tom Hensley, of Jenna's apology, of Mercer's daughter, of every passenger who'd ever been doubted for existing. He whispered, "We made it." Tom. At the gate, reporters waited, but he slipped through a side exit into the quiet terminal. Children ran past, laughing. A janitor hummed, a family reunited with tears. He stopped by a wall of framed photographs, pioneers of flight. Among them, Amelia Earhart, the Tuskegee Airmen, Bessie Coleman, And, newly added, a black and white shot of him sitting in seat 2 amperes, head turned toward the window. Caption Adrian Cole, proved that dignity can fly. He smiled softly. Didn't prove it, just reminded them to look. He took one last glance at the sky through the glass dome planes, taking off in synchronized intervals, each carrying strangers who would never know his name. He whispered, "Good." Inside the air traffic tower, a controller adjusted his headset. Tower to flight. 2848. You're clear for takeoff on runway 9. Static. Then a voice crackled back calm. Female. Steady. Copy that. Tower. Flight 2848 rolling. And tell the ground crew the sky belongs to everyone. The controller paused, smiled, and looked out the window as the plane lifted into orange dawn. Its contrails crossed the horizon like handwriting across a blank page. White text on black. Sometimes justice arrives 30,000 feet in the air. Sometimes it just needs a seat, and someone who refuses to give it up. In the end, Flight 2847 wasn't just about one man in seat 2 amperes. It was about every moment we've stayed silent when something wasn't right. It's a reminder that dignity isn't a luxury for the privileged, it's a right we owe to one another. True courage isn't loud. It's the quiet decision to speak when it's easier to look away. We all carry unseen biases, shaped by fear, a bit, or the stories we've been told about people who don't look like us. But as the saying goes, the truth will set you free. But first, it will make you uncomfortable. Growth begins right there. In that discomfort, what Flight 2847 teaches us is that fairness is not a destination, it's a daily practice. It's in the way we greet a stranger, listen without judgment, or pause before assuming. The world doesn't need perfect people. It needs honest ones. People willing to admit mistakes, learn, and try again. Because, like the old proverb says, gold fears no fire. Real character only shines when tested by adversity. If this story moved you, if it made you think about the small injustices that pass unnoticed every day, take a moment to share your thoughts below. Tell us about a time you spoke up or wish you had. Hit like if you believe kindness can be stronger than prejudice. And subscribe if you want more stories that challenge, heal, and inspire. May your days be calm, your skies clear, and your heart brave enough to face what's unfair and change it, because every act of courage, no matter how small, helps the world breathe a little easier.